Hello, Internet. Good morning. I am Ryan Ingram, and this is the Friday morning live stream. It's been a couple of weeks. I have missed the past 2 weeks. They have been real busy. We have closed about 26, 25 properties this month, somewhere in there, and we have a couple more to go still. So it's been packed. I'm really excited about all of the things that we have going on. We have officially hit our goal of buying 200 homes this year. So let me pull it up. We have currently closed 208 properties this year, which has me pretty excited. When we first started this year, we thought that it was not going to be possible. And it took us several months for us to gain some traction on that target. Last year, we purchased a little over 100 homes, and that was pretty cool. I think we purchased around 120. So to start the year thinking that we were going to be able to stretch it up to 200 seemed really far-fetched, and most certainly did not feel like we were going to accomplish it for many months. Probably the first 5 or 6 months, it still felt a little bit like a pipe dream. We had a good May and a good July. Those were big months for us, which made it seem a little bit more possible. And then going into November, we pretty much agreed that we wouldn't be able to hit 200 homes, and that was okay. But we were able to get it done. We had one private lender come through that wanted to give us a pretty sizable chunk of money, and that's what got us through ultimately. So it's really cool. I'm really pumped, and I don't know. Most of me wants to just go ahead, make another goal, and keep it moving. So I told myself that I was going to talk about it on this live stream this morning about hitting 200 and how I didn't think that we were going to be able to do it for the majority of the year. And then we picked up steam thinking that we were going to be able to do it. And then in November, October, November, that time frame, said, hey, we're probably not going to hit it, and that's going to be okay. And then we did. So wanted to just kind of give my candid thoughts about it before I forget about this forever. So, I mean, obviously the market is changing as well. So for the majority of the year, we had a lot of competition on the offers that we were writing, and prices were regularly going up. So, at this point, with 200 homes, we have a decent sample size, and looking back at all the good deals that we've gotten, I would say that the majority of them are still good deals. I would say there's a handful of them that, had we not purchased them back then at those prices, we probably wouldn't purchase them now, but they also probably wouldn't sell for that. However, I still don't foresee any issues in getting those transferred over to long-term financing. I think they're still going to appraise for the appropriate amount, because since we've been buying properties in 2017, the prices have been climbing pretty consistently. So even if there's a little bit of a lull in prices, and even if the overall appraised value goes down a little bit, it'll still be okay. They will still be worth more than they were, in 2017 prices, kind of proving the point that the best time to buy real estate is 10 years ago, and the second best time to buy real estate is today. So never a good reason to not buy real estate if you're looking to acquire a larger portfolio to kind of help your family build some generational wealth, build some wealth for you as an individual over the next 30 to 40 years. Looking at real estate over the long term, is always, in my opinion, the appropriate way to view real estate. I don't think you should. So much wind here today. This weather is bananas. Opening up some doors. If you're looking to get into real estate for like 2, 3, 4 years, if that's your vision, you need to pay a lot more attention to the market. But if you are wanting to purchase an asset that's going to stay in your portfolio for 30, 40, 50 years, then the market isn't so important. The more important thing would be getting that property over to long-term financing. I was interviewed on a podcast recently that's going to come out in sometime in January, and they wanted to talk about the market, all the happenings, and there was a realtor on there, and he wanted to talk about a lot of metrics that I really couldn't keep up with. I mean, our business model is geared towards that long-term view, so we're not trying to make decisions on how we should act today based on what's going to be happening, 3 or 4 months from now, or, what will interest rates do? I'm sure that's important, but it's not something that we monitor closely because, from a 30 to 40 year perspective, an interest rate is going to affect your immediate cash flow for sure, but there's going to be ample opportunities to refinance into lower interest rates later on down the road. So your maximum exposure when you're building a rental property portfolio is the money that you have out to acquire a property before long-term financing. So getting that property to long-term financing should be kind of equated to reaching home base. Like you're good as soon as you get over to long-term financing. So if you're using, hard money loans, private money loans, if you are putting your own capital into purchasing a deal outright, that's your largest exposure in a volatile market. So if you purchase a property for $100,000 and that property value goes down to 80,000, and you have a hard money loan on it, or you've put your own capital in it, then temporarily, some of your equity disappears. If you're, using hard money, then you're going to have to figure out a different way to get the $10,000, $15,000 needed to refinance that over to long term. But as soon as you're on long term, it doesn't matter if that property value goes from $100,000 to $80,000 because you're on your long term financing. The chances of it being called are pretty slim. So it just becomes a matter of sustaining the asset, keeping it occupied, and keeping the deferred maintenance away from it. And so long as you can do that, long term, you'll be pretty successful in this whole real estate game. So as you are consuming content about market volatility, I would suggest that you keep in mind your long-term aspirations and only potentially change your strategy for the current exposure that you have, any of your own capital or any private or hard money that you have out there. I would check that out. Awesome. Hey, that's great to hear. Congratulations on your first 2 rentals. That's a big deal. Especially if you have a solid, your first 2, that's awesome. Because now you've started your clock from an LLC perspective. So as soon as you own these for 2 years, you'll start to be able to use rental income to get loans as well. And I think the first 2 years of owning rental properties are the most difficult to get through. So you're well on your way. I would say keep building. And congrats. That's awesome. Got a couple of video topics to talk about this morning. And I think I also want to go ahead and give like a brief update on that abandoned mansion project. I know I didn't release a video this past Saturday, and I'll record one for tomorrow to be released, but there's really no updates. We got a harsh stop order from the local municipality. So we need to stop working on that property for just a little bit while we do some administrative bureaucratic paperwork. It's very much so formulaic in nature, but I suppose that is always going to be the feedback that a practitioner gives to a bureaucrat. I would love to answer some questions if anybody's up for it. Happy Friday. Yeah, that's awesome. This seems absurd for me to say it, and I want to say it like as respectfully as possible, but especially when you have two, I think one of the biggest things is now that your foot's in the door, like congratulations, this is a huge deal. So long as you keep, a lot of active income coming in order to pay for the two rentals as things are needed, then I mean the appreciation, the principal pay down, and kind of starting the tax benefits that you're going to get from these two properties alone are kind of monumental for the average person. But I would say getting to 10 properties as quickly as you can should be your number one priority at the moment. Obviously, you want to make sure that you run these two rental properties very well, but 10 properties, in my opinion, is when you start taking advantage of like the law of large numbers, the law of averages, whatever you want to call it. Whereas like right now, if one of your properties needs a capital expenditure item, a roof, a new furnace, AC system, whatever it is, you're going to be hard pressed for the rental income and what you net to clear and pay for those two items or whatever capital expenditure item it might be. However, when you get to 10, the income and what you net from all of these properties on a monthly basis, in theory, should be able to take care of or handle whatever capital expenditure item comes up on any given month for your portfolio. And as soon as you no longer need to inject your own capital on a regular basis for a business, I think then you're well on your way, right? Because then in theory, this portfolio, it becomes, at least from a financial perspective, like a self-sustaining asset. And that's something really solid, because now, you don't have to borrow from that in the event of, a life experience. You can kind of keep your personal finances and your business finances completely separate and hope that there's not much crossover. I want to say that in a very encouraging way, though. I mean, definitely stop and celebrate your second acquisition. That's really cool. I don't know where in the world everybody else is, but it is a cold one today. The office building that we have, I don't actually know when it was built, but I know for sure that even though we replaced the windows, the insulations in these exterior walls leaves a lot to be desired. So it's not like it's not toasty up here by any means. This was built in 1911. That was a good year. 1911. And it is cold. It is -4 outside, I believe, at the moment. And I think that's the actual temperature, not like adjusting for what it feels like with all this wind. But yeah, I'm watching the wind do some pretty crazy stuff to all this snow. And then I could see it moving the screens of these windows. And because the walls aren't insulated that well around these windows, it might be a head game I'm playing with myself, but I'm pretty sure I could feel the wind coming in through these walls. So we'll see. We'll see how long I last. Might need to crank up the heat some more in this building. especially if you guys don't ask any questions. Let me see what kind of topics I'm supposed to discuss today. Well, we're not done yet. We're not done yet. Hey, yeah, thanks. That's fun that you're on here. I appreciate it. And thanks for all the good deals you bring. Let's see. I used some of my HELOC monies from my main home to obtain a second property. I was going to refinance on the second property now that I have a tenant, but it does not make sense to because of the high interest rate. Do you agree? Um, I don't think that that is going to be so linear of an answer, right? Obviously, you don't want to have negative cash flow. So, if you are going to have negative cash flow, you should really consider not doing it. However, if refinancing this property is going to allow you to pull out the initial capital that you put in, repay your HELOC for a little bit, and then go down and take out another deal. So, and then buy your third rental, right? Then I think that would make sense. Because one thing you don't want to overlook is kind of like the velocity of the capital, right? So you have to weigh in like you regularly recycling that HELOC money may be more impactful than the cash flow now, right? So again, I would really caution against going into like a negative cash flow if that's what the high interest rate is going to cause you to do on your rental property. But if it's not going to cause you to go negative and it will allow you to take out enough capital to purchase a third rental, then I suggest that be what you do. Because if you have a third property, then you're going to increase the amount of appreciation that you get. Once you get that third property on the long-term financing, you're going to increase the amount of principal paydown that you have on an annual basis. That third property will also increase the amount of tax benefits that you'll receive, and it'll also increase your cash flow, at least on the gross side, right? So I think interest rates are important, right? Again, because the higher the interest rates go, the less money you're going to make doing this. However, we ought not overlook the long-term impact that not refinancing is going to have and slowing down your acquisitions. So it's a fine line. You don't want to be negative, but you also don't want to stop growing, and you don't want to cease your growing based on just one of the arms of the ways that you make money in real estate investing. So it's a fine line to balance, but at the end of the day, I would say that the single family home space is definitely like a volume based business where the more properties you have, generally speaking, the better off that you'll be. And getting hung up on any number that's probably less than 10, I would say is a pretty rough spot to be in. So you're going to want to make sure that you keep your eye on these, large numbers, and you want to, whenever you have to inject your own capital into the business, that should serve as motivation to get more of these properties so that your portfolio could be a little bit more self-sustaining. I don't like this term because I think it's just a significant amount of marketing. I think, if you look at this BRRRR method or whatever you want to call it, I think it is some companies' attempt to spice up or reinvigorate what real estate investing already is. So, I mean, if you take out and, really think about all that goes into this BRRRR method, quote unquote, there's only so many things you could do with real estate. You could buy it. You can, rehab it. And if you own any property for any length of time, you we'll rehab it, right? So then you can rent it out. You could refinance it, which if you own any property for any length of time, it will at some point be advantageous to refinance it. So the only things that, and then, the last R is just repeat, like do it again. And if you're committed to real estate investing, and if that's an avenue that you want to pursue, of course, you're going to repeat the process of buying a house. If you're not going to sell it, then you're going to rent it. So the only other things that's not included in the BRRRR in that you can do, you can interact with a piece of real estate. You could sell it, you could live in it, or you could just let it rot, right? Because the renovate part of this BRRRR method. Let's say you buy a bad piece of property and you don't renovate it, right? You're just going to let it rot. So selling it, living it, let it rot. Those are the only things that you could do inside of real estate investing that are not included in the BRRRR method, right? So it's kind of like somebody tried to rebrand real estate investing. The only variable that, because I guess, it's such effective marketing to rebrand it, and it's got quite the following. I get a little bit of pushback when I don't speak highly of this method, because I think it's just saying the same thing a different way, which is largely unnecessary. People want to talk about the time frame. Like in the BRRRR method, you could buy more properties more quickly, right? Because you are refinancing immediately after, you rent the property out. And there are just some things in life that aren't up to you, especially when you are using, other people's money, right? And you're talking about long-term debt. So, seasoning is a real thing that a lot of lenders have. Anywhere from 0 months to 18 months is what we've seen. And then you're kind of arbitrarily trying to hurry yourself along. So, this false sense of being rushed is the only variable that the BRRRR method may have that normal real estate investing doesn't. But that really speaks to the ambition of that particular person, right? So, we purchased 200 homes this year. I am not going to say that we are doing that method, right? Somebody's BRRRR might be one property per year. It's really up to the individual. And this whole sense of urgency or speed is largely irrelevant and extraordinarily subjective. So to your overall long-term aspirations. So I kind of identify as a real estate investor, not somebody that, and I guess because I don't sell all the properties that we purchase, because I don't live in all the properties that we purchase, and because I don't let any of our properties rot, by process of elimination, I suppose I do the BRRRR method, because the BRRRR method is all encompassing of real estate investing. So I'm trying to think of what else has been rebranded that's kind of frustrating for some people, right? Because it's not like the BRRRR method is this new thing. There are people that I've met that have been investing in real estate in like the 60s and 70s, and they were doing the same thing. We bought a portfolio sometime last year from a lady who, her and her husband purchased about 10 or 11 properties over a couple decades solely using credit cards. That's pretty cool. And that they did that way before this whole marketing scheme was launched. In the middle of refinancing 3 properties, just got the bill for the appraisal. It is $600 per property. Seems rather high. What do you normally see? We pay about $300 to $450 per property for the appraisal. I think that is high, but it probably is almost unimportant based on the amount of cash that you're going to get back from those properties, and how much good you're going to be able to do inside your portfolio by redeploying that capital that you pull out from those three. So while, $150 extra per property might be a little bit off-putting, I'm not so sure how much time I would spend or how much shopping around I would do to save $450 when, let's say you're refinancing each of these at 60, which I'm sure is low compared. You're talking about 180 grand that you're going to get from a lender. I wouldn't try to save 450 at this juncture, and I wouldn't necessarily, especially knowing like your particular setup and how you can make a lot of money if you put your time, energy, and effort elsewhere. You could make significantly more than $450 doing what you do with the time that you would spend trying to save this. I'm looking to help my parents buy their first rental property with a HELOC. Would you recommend buying one cash or finance two? And should I wait until mid 23? If you see a property that you would love to own for the next 30, 40 years, I wouldn't wait at all between now or mid 2023, right? I'm never a fan of sitting on the sidelines. There's a great book by Howard Marks called The Most Important Thing. And in that, he talks about how, especially when you're looking at economic volatility, the only thing that you can do is make the best decision that you can based on all the information that you have on hand and roll with it, right? So I wouldn't suggest waiting. I wouldn't suggest putting yourselves on the sidelines. If you are sitting here making like really short-term decisions, like if you're trying to flip a property, for sure, I might wait a little bit, right? But at the end of the day, if this is a long-term decision for you, then I wouldn't let, a couple of months deter you over the next 30, 40, 50 years, however long you are wanting to own this. And I would also, I love rental properties. I think rental properties are fantastic. However, I don't necessarily think that everybody wants to have rental properties. And having rental properties isn't nearly as easy as a lot of these books might lead you to be, right? So not everybody wants to get into real estate. So the only thing that I would say about helping your parents is I know that perhaps it may be a better idea for your parents to use their HELOC and be a private lender to you. If you are already the owner of some rental properties and you would like to purchase more rental properties, then see if your parents would lend you money from their HELOC and see if they would be happy making a spread based on whatever they borrow the money at and the 10 to 12% that you could borrow money from them at. That way, they're making money. Their time, energy, effort, commitments are pretty low. You're going to do all the work. And I've found that there's a significant amount of people out there that have different financial needs, right? So the appreciation, the principal pay down, the tax benefits, that might not be so important to some people. They might be more after cash flow. We have a significant number of private lenders that is what they essentially use us for. They've already made it. They've already created for themselves the lifestyle that they want, right? So they're not interested in taking on the problems that are associated with having rental properties. They're interested in having more money show up in their mailbox on a monthly basis. And perhaps that's what your parents are after. Now, if your parents, really want to own rental properties and manage rental properties, and if they are eager to accept the challenges that come with rental properties, then perhaps real estate and rental properties is for them. But I wouldn't suggest everyone get involved in real estate. In fact, I have very few people in my social circle that I would try and pull into owning rental properties, especially when you're just starting. Just starting out is one of the more difficult things that you could do. Now, I'm saying that from a lens of here locally, I don't know of any property management company that does a really good job for the owners of those properties. I'm sure there are some markets where property management is a fantastic thing, and they're able to add value to the owners. But at this point, I've just heard too many bad things about local property management companies, and we have purchased too many properties from burnt out of state landlords um, to suggest taking somebody with no experience and asking and all of a sudden making them, real estate investors and property managers. If it's a business that they're interested in building, sure, let's do it. But if it's a way that they think might be a good way to make a couple extra $100 per month, I'd probably try to find some different solutions. That's my 2 cents. Also, this week we closed on 3 properties, and that puts us over the 400 property mark, which is pretty exciting. I'm pretty proud of that. And at this point, we started in 2017, late 2017, so we are 5 years in. And just for fun, and because I was recently talking about this, so it's all top of mind. In 2017, we ended the year with 2 properties. In 2018, we ended the year with I just said it was top of mind. 21 properties in 2018. It's a little bit deceiving because in December we closed on the package of 13 properties. Otherwise, we would have ended the year with 8. But yeah, 21 properties is what we ended 2018 with. 2019, we ended with 38 properties. 2020, we ended with 80. 2021, we ended with 200. And then this year, we're going to end with somewhere over 400. 400 and probably 407 or 408, somewhere in there. We're at 402 at the moment. With 6 more that should close this year. So 408 seems realistic. Seems reasonable. So crazy. So cold today. Do you check in on your rentals in some manner when we get this first really cold snap? Absolutely. Good question. So yesterday and the day before that, we spent very diligently. We went around to all of our currently vacant properties to turn off the water and drain the lines. So even if they're being worked on, we went ahead and did that just because sometimes furnaces go out and nobody is there to complain. So last year we did not do that, and we had 7 properties with burst pipes that all took a very long time to fix. So one awesome fella spent many days pumping out water from basements. So we are not doing that this year, and we're just going ahead and draining the lines and turning off the water at all the properties. That's a great question. Thank you. I appreciate it. How would one go about putting their rental property in their business name? I would do this through a title company. You could do it as quickly and easily, like with an attorney through a quit claim deed. But every time quit claim deeds have been done outside of title companies, there seem to generate new title issues whenever you're trying to do it again. So I would go through a title company, let them know that you want to just transfer the property into the name of an LLC that is owned by you, and you would like to do so via a quit claim deed, and you would like for them to prepare it. You're going to pay a little bit more than just, downloading the form, filling it out, and recording it at the county, which is well within your right to do, but almost guaranteed that something will go wrong at some point. And generally, when the title company is involved, it's significantly easier for that title company that's facilitating the transaction when you decide to sell it, when you decide to refinance it, or whatever else, be able to um, call upon that other title company to get some clarification if needed. We have several properties and that have gotten held up at the title company because of some faulty quitclaim deed. So I think it's always the best practice to use a title company instead of just filling out some forms yourself. Good morning. Welcome back. It's been a while. All right. How much does it cost to renovate a house? That is one of the titles that I'd like to talk about. So, how much does it cost to renovate a house? And that is entirely dependent on the condition of that house. So, I think if you are looking to get into real estate, one of the best things that you could do is just start researching and uh, figuring out very specific items. So, how much is it going to cost for a new furnace? That's going to get you a wide range based on whether or not any ductwork is needed, what size furnace you need, and what style furnace you would like. But you can get kind of a ballpark or an average for that. And on your first couple of properties, I'd be very conservative. So if somebody, tells you that on average it costs $5,000 to replace a furnace, just add another thousand, maybe $1,500 to that, and budget $6,500 for the replacement of that. And then as you're walking through any of the properties that you're interested in, uh, you can go ahead and just in your head mark $6,500 for a new furnace if you're looking at an old furnace inside of a house. Same with a roof. You can figure out what roofers charge like per square, which is how some of them calculate it. But that is also dependent on how many layers that roof has, and if any decking needs to be replaced under the shingles. So just getting an average, maybe big roof, 13,000, small roof, 5,000. Figure out what size roof that is, and be conservative by kind of padding those numbers a little bit. And I think if you're too conservative, what you're going to realize is that none of the deals make sense, and somebody else is going to buy them before you do. So, in the event that you start to experience that, maybe try to get a little bit more granular in your approximations and figure out how to get more close to a realistic price. And a lot of this comes with experience. And, very regularly, one of our main problems is that we go over budget on our rehabs because we purchased one property, it was occupied when we purchased it. They moved out shortly after we purchased it. And lo and behold, we went to rehab it, and all the exterior walls kind of started flapping in the wind. Some of the seal plates had rotted out. So we had to fix a lot of those items before we rented it out again. And obviously, that's not something that you could necessarily check for until you start, pushing on the walls, demoing the existing kitchen and stuff like that. So it's almost impossible to accurately budget for all of the variables that could go wrong. However, you can get pretty close by being really familiar with what it costs. So also flooring, you could get some estimates on that. We are generally around $4.50 per square foot installed. That's materials and labor. That's kind of what we budget for. So you can take things like that and, very quickly start on a short list, figure out about how much it's going to cost you to rehab a house, just by, walking through it and looking at all the things that you can see. And if you want to be really conservative, you can add like a unforeseen budget, kind of a miscellaneous line item for things that might come up, a contingency, if you will. But again, you want to be careful on how conservative you're being, lest you make yourself not competitive. So it's a fine line, and it is extraordinarily up in the air based on the property it is that you're looking at. And I would also like to just kind of bring back and mention that we didn't do our first rehab project until we had 20 properties. So I just mentioned that we purchased a package of 13 in 2018, and it was a package because there was one horrible property in there that I really didn't want to own, but that was our first rehab project. So we had over 20 properties. Our 21st property was our first rehab project. So there's no shame in buying like turnkey only properties for, to get to and build a portfolio of like critical mass, because it's pretty complicated. And, rehabbing a property successfully, especially if you're not going to do a lot of the work yourself, is going to require that you lean on a lot of really good relationships from contractors. And if it's your first couple of rehabs, the chances of you getting taken advantage of by a contractor, paying more than you should, all those are really high. So if you don't necessarily have the bandwidth to do a project, I would recommend buying a property that needs very little work. They're very predictable. If you buy a property move-in ready, it'll be cash flowing faster. It'll appraise easier. The bank will lend on it easier. So that's what I would suggest if you're not too familiar. I purchased a fire damaged 3,300 square foot property in Bates Hendricks, downtown Indianapolis, Indiana. Now I'm struggling to find an architect. Yeah, I bet. That's a big project. Let's see here. I'm working with an architect right now for that abandoned mansion project that we're doing, and I found him via the realtor that I mainly use. He's had some clients in the past that have used this architect and were very pleased. And I think he's very reasonable from an affordability perspective. I am not so sure if he does Indiana or Indianapolis. I suppose that's not too far away from us, but I don't know these things. I don't know how far architects go and what they do. I think one of the cool things about real estate investing that I lean on a little bit and I'm really thankful for is that, these properties have been around for a really long time. So the entire real estate industry is pretty tried and true and tested. And if you ever have a problem, the chances of somebody else having that same problem previously are really high, almost 100%, which is pretty cool. Most industries can't say that. So I'm sure if you go to a couple of real estate investor meetups, if you get a hold of some other real estate investors, even if it's, through using PropStream to pull a list of people that have, more than 20, more than 50 properties, and reach out to them via PropStream by, skip tracing them and telling them your situation and just that you're looking for a recommendation. You could probably do that. And I'm sure you would find an investor-friendly architect pretty quickly, right? Because one of the things about real estate investing is I've noticed a lot of the vendors are either 100% geared towards serving retail clients like homeowners, owner-occupants, kind of full-blown retail commercial stuff, or they are taking advantage of smaller problems that they could do more quantity of, that involve less headache and less commitment, right? So I guess the nice way to say that is investor friendly, one that's trying to do some pretty basic stuff on a pretty tight budget pretty quickly. The emotional commitment on that is significantly less than helping a homeowner plan out the perfect space for the next 50 years of their occupancy. So that's what I would suggest, and how I would track one down if I was looking for one and my realtor didn't have one very handy. Oh yeah. Been doing this for an hour. Any questions you have, I'm happy to answer them. I've got this sheet of paper sitting right here. This is the water bill for the abandoned mansion. I know I made a video about this already, but it is $4,531.53. I'm waiting for the right time to feel so inclined to pay for this. Now, we don't need water for quite some time, so it's going to be sitting on my desk for a decent amount of time. It's a tough pill to swallow, which I guess I can't do without water there. So we'll see what happens. I'll wait till the time's right. Property's been vacant since about 2006. Somewhere between 2003 and 2006 is when it went empty. So it's just been sitting there, accumulating those quarterly bills. Thanks, man. Yep, real estate's where it's at. Have you purchased turnkeys yourself? Yes, I have. I'm not necessarily a fan of saying turnkey. I guess let me be very clear when I'm talking about turnkey rental properties. So turnkey, there are some people out there that call themselves like turnkey investment providers or something. And their whole business model is to buy a house in disrepair or buy some type of distressed property, renovate it at like rental grade, and then sell it to an investor as like a turnkey rental property. I am not in favor of doing that under any conditions. Do not buy from somebody that their entire business model revolves around supplying out-of-state investors or even local investors with turnkey rental properties. Because in the event that you have successfully renovated a house in any type of quality manner, then it makes 100% more sense to sell that for full retail value to an owner occupant, right? So discounting that and selling it to an investor means that there was something done not well, some corner was cut, or something that you need to dig into a little bit that just doesn't make sense. As the insurance agency that I have, I've written several insurance policies on these kind of turnkey properties. And I would say that each of the ones that I've written, the investor got taken advantage of in some way. The one that bothered me the most that I became very vocal about, and this was a couple of years ago now, so the prices don't make sense anymore, but an out-of-state investor purchased a rental property for about $83,000. And that was, at the time, we were buying similar properties in that same condition for $40,000 and $45,000 each time. They put unrealistic comps in there, and they put forth this like package to send to out-of-state people that was very unrealistic and just honestly not truthful. So if you do any amount of due diligence yourself from information that doesn't come from these turnkey providers, then you're probably going to see pretty quickly where the difference is and what is actually happening. But in the meantime, I would say buying a property that needs very little work is what I mean by turnkey, not a property from a turnkey provider. No, that's one of the cool things about real estate investing is there is not really a degree that you can get in it. Uh, you can become a realtor, but being a realtor and a real estate investor are two separate things. To become a real estate investor, there's no formal education, there's no formal teaching, there's nothing really from an academic perspective that you need to master before you can embark on it. It is something that you kind of got to reach inside yourself, find the intrinsic motivation, and just get started. A lot of people will pay some type of tuition in learning this. And generally, that tuition comes not in the form of money to a school or university, but rather money to a contractor for unpaid work, um, paying too much for a type of repair or some other type of like real world life experience where as soon as you do it, you're like, you know what, never going to do that again, but I'll learn my lesson. And I'm just going to think about this as tuition for learning this lesson, right? So if you are interested in becoming a real estate investor, I would not recommend becoming a realtor. I would not recommend buying any real estate investing courses or anything like that. I would just get plugged in locally, find some local real estate investors. I would read a significant amount of books about real estate investing. One of my favorites is by John Schwab. It's called Building Wealth One House at a Time. And if you're interested in single family homes, I think that's probably one of the better books that you could possibly get. Now, if you are interested in apartment buildings or commercial real estate, then there are books on that field as well. But I would say learn as much as you can on the front end via books and meeting, networking, and becoming friends with other local real estate investors. And then as soon as you figure out what type of real estate investing you want to pursue, then I would start limiting your kind of networking to other real estate investors that are local, that are in the same type of real estate investing that you're interested in. I think that would be the way to go. Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, I mean, there's no commitment. Real estate investing is 100% safe, self-paced. So you can go as fast as you would like to or as slow as you would like to. Now, it's my opinion that going slower is a little bit more expensive, as you're going to have to put a little bit more of your own capital into the business, right? So I recommend to most people to get to 10 rental properties as quickly as possible. And I know that that could sound discouraging when you're just getting started and you don't have any rental properties and you're not even sure like how to get started. But a lot of people that I have seen that get burned out and ultimately end up selling their portfolio get stuck at a number that is smaller than 10. And I think 10 is also an important number to get to, because at that number, you're starting to play in like the law of averages or large numbers or whatever you want to call it, where in any given month, one property might have something go wrong that needs work. And the other 9, the income from those can pay for collectively whatever repair needs to be done on that one property, which is really cool, because that is, a self-sustaining portfolio where you don't have to inject your own capital when something goes wrong. So that would be my recommendation. But yeah, I mean, a good friend of mine has just shy of 100 rentals, and he works a full-time job. In fact, I think he works 2 full-time jobs. So it can be done. And then I know multiple people that have, upwards of 20 properties that still work full-time jobs. In fact, I would say you should never leave your job to become a real estate investor. I think that's a really bad idea. I would say I've found a couple people on the internet. They're like, oh, I have 4 rental properties and I was finally able to leave my job. So you are soon going to be back at another job. 4 rental properties is not enough to leave a job. 40 rental properties is not enough to leave your job, right? To this fellow that has 100 rental properties that works 2 full-time jobs, he does not believe that 100 rental properties is enough to leave your full-time job, right? So real estate investing is definitely a long-term game. 30, 40, 50 years down the road, you will be significantly better off for it. From a short-term cash flow perspective, using real estate investing to leave your job, probably not a very realistic thing to do. More of a long-term play. Probably leave your job to start kind of working for yourself. But there's definitely a period of time where real estate investing just kind of becomes a version of self-employment. If you want to kind of maximize your returns and leave a job, you're going to have to consume more of the proceeds of the business by doing things like paying yourself a management fee rather than somebody else. Maybe taking on some of the work orders, doing it yourself rather than paying somebody else, which, it's more of a job than this whole kind of passive income that the internet may try to sell you. One of my tenants has 2 fairly big dogs. I'm a dog person myself, but how do you make sure you protect yourself if that dog were to bite someone? Well, this is a really good question, and I think it is one that not many people have a very good understanding of. And I think we could probably talk about it for a couple hours, and there would still be a significant number of people that still don't have a good understanding of how this works. But you, as the owner of the property, at the end of the day, are 100% liable for anything that occurs on that property. Now, most people mitigate this liability by getting a good insurance policy. That insurance policy is going to have a liability coverage on it, which is generally pretty inexpensive. So if you own a property, you should get the maximum amount of liability insurance that your insurance agent is willing to provide you. Sometimes that'll be $500,000. Sometimes that will be $1 million per property, per policy. Now, do not get anything lesser than the maximum that company is willing to offer you. And if that maximum that they're willing to offer you is less than $1 million, I would highly recommend that you get a umbrella policy or something else that will get you to that $1 million mark. Now, the reason that I think that is 100% arbitrary, and it's more of a personal preference and a feeling of comfort. Nothing else. Now, another thing that is common for people to do to mitigate their liability on that particular property is by putting the property into an LLC. However, this has problems of its own. If you have a loan in your personal name, if you chose to get like a Fannie Freddie loan because it's the cheapest interest rate that you're going to get and it's the longest term loan that you can get, then they're not going to want you to have that property in the name of an LLC. They're going to want that to be in your personal name. And in the event that you want to refinance, in the event that you have to send in your insurance policy on an annual basis, is going to cause some types of issues because the insurance policy has to be in the name that the property is deeded to. So if the insurance property is in your personal name, or if the property is in your personal name, the insurance policy is going to have to be in your personal name. If it's in an LLC, then the insurance policy has to be in the name of an LLC. So generally, if you are going the Fannie Freddie route, if you're going to try to get 8, 9, 10 properties on a Fannie Freddie loan, then you're going to want to keep those in your personal name, which then drives back the point of getting that umbrella policy a little bit harder, right? So making sure that you have the appropriate amount of liability insurance and the appropriate amount of coverage apart from that policy, which would be the umbrella policy. Now, the property being in the name of an LLC, in theory, what that does is it separates all of your personal belongings, all of your personal assets, and you as an individual for being personally liable So where the LLC is liable. So in the event that something happens, like a dog bites someone on your property, and you are found to be liable, then if the property is in the name of an LLC, then in theory, um, all they can do is take the assets that that LLC has, which is why some people are advocates of only having one property in any given LLC. Um, that is more common on larger assets where it's like a one apartment building, one hotel, things like that. If you are like me and you are building a portfolio of single family homes, then that becomes a little bit more unrealistic. Um, However, if you feel so inclined, you could also get an umbrella policy in the name of your LLC. And umbrella policies work in a similar way, where the umbrella policy has to be in the name of the LLC, and that umbrella policy is only good for that LLC. If you have a personal umbrella, it does not extend over your LLCs, and vice versa. If you have an umbrella policy for your LLC, it does not extend over your personal name. So that is the first layer of liability protection from this dog, is you and your personal insurance. However, the biggest kickback that you should be feeling right now is, well, it's not my dog and I can't be there to monitor or raise that dog or help those guests be safe around that dog, right? So, what is then prudent is for you to require your resident, your tenant, to have a renter's insurance policy. And on this renter's insurance policy, they should have a significant amount of liability insurance. Now, it's more common for renters policies to have 100,000, 300,000, and maybe 500,000. I haven't seen many renters insurance policies have $1 million liability limits. I'm sure they're out there, but not many people are willing to pay for those, I don't think. So the renter's insurance policy is going to be that second layer of protection. However, it should be very clearly understood that that renter's insurance policy may not cover something. And if that renter's insurance policy doesn't cover it, you are liable again. So it's kind of like the property is here, your insurance is here, and then the second layer is there. All of these other layers can be taken away, and you are at the bottom of it, fully liable for anything that happens. Your insurance policy that you put on this property is going to have some types of exclusions, right? Things that they don't cover for. You should figure out what those are and kind of plan for it appropriately. The renter's insurance policy, they're going to have things that they don't cover. Someone that I know, they had a rogue inherited resident burn the house down. They had a renter's insurance policy. Well, their renter's insurance policy doesn't cover intentional damages because that's a crime, right? Well, his insurance still covered it. So he was able to, not lose any money now that he has a burnt down house. But I think that's a really good example of renter's insurance not covering something and the owner's insurance policy still being liable. I don't think that's right. And that doesn't sit well with me, right? It should go on the renter's insurance policy, not the owner's policy. The owner didn't burn the house down, right? In fact, if he did, it wouldn't be covered under his policy either. But still, I mean, these are things that, one-off is very unlikely to occur. But as you start building a portfolio of a decent number of properties, it's tough to scale. It's tough to kind of account for. So I would make sure, especially when it comes to animals, you make sure that your insurance policy doesn't have any animal exclusions. And if it does have any animal exclusions, like if they don't allow aggressive breeds or dogs with a history of violence or biting to be on the policy, then you need to make sure with your residents that they don't have any dogs of that breed or any dogs with that history. And same for your renter's insurance policy that you require your resident to have. Now, when you require your resident to have a renter's insurance policy, I would also recommend that you get added as an additional insured. Now, what that's going to do is it's going to extend the same coverage to you on that policy. So, being an additional insured and being listed as one on their policy kind of makes you like the co-owner of that policy. You're not going to be paying for it, but any liability coverage that is extended to the renter or the owner, the main owner of that policy, is also going to be extended to you as an additional insured. Now, sometimes you might get kickback on that, and they might not list you as an additional insured, in which they will list you as an additional interest. Now, as an additional interest, you don't have the same coverages under that policy as the owner does. However, you will get notified if that policy is canceled for non-payment, or if it's canceled for any other reason. You're going to get notified in the mail. So you're going to want to be on the lookout for those types of mail, because in the event that it's canceled for non-payment or whatever other reason, then you're removing a layer of protection. Right now, outside of you having insurance, you having the appropriate legal structure for your property, and you requiring rental insurance for your resident, you can also, I know some people require like some type of pet insurance on that particular animal. That is a product that's out there. That's a product that I have no experience with, and that's a product that I wouldn't be able to give any advice on. However, it does exist. I would not let that suffice in lieu of renter's insurance, but I would consider that to be more of a third rung of protection for you. So that way, if you have these two big dogs in your property and you're worried about them, if each of them have their own little pet insurance policy and your renter has renter's insurance, and you're listed as either an additional insured or an additional interest, then you should be good to go. And so long as you keep your insurance in place as well. And that is about all that you can do. I would say you should get extraordinarily familiar with the limitations of all of these insurance policies, because whether you know it or not, there's a myriad of issues that you are self-insuring right now that you might not be aware of. So you could, once you identify those, you can start, planning for them. I'm trying to think of other things that I could say about this, but I think that is pretty detailed. I think if you do all of those things, then you're going to be in a pretty good spot. The only other thing that I would say is pet deposits are one of those things that aren't necessarily ever going to be sufficient to do all of the damages that pet may cause. So I'd make sure that you, in addition to collecting a pet deposit or some type of non-refundable pet fee up front, I would also collect one on a monthly basis. And then we also use a program called Rent Check, which is like a client-facing, like resident-facing app where they are prompted to turn in inspection reports of their properties. And I would recommend that you do those pretty regularly, especially in properties that have some big dogs, because big dogs can do big damage real fast. And this damage can be upwards of $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 to repair. One of the main issues that we have with really big dogs is people keeping them in their basement, and their basement being covered in dog poop and dog urine, and getting that smell out of that porous concrete is a monumental task, one that takes a lot of time, a lot of stinky time, and a lot of stinky effort to resolve. So there's no amount of non-refundable pet fee, no amount of monthly fee that anyone would ever agree to pay to that would fully cover our exposure for that. So one of the ways that we try to limit that is by doing these regular inspections with that company called Rent Check. So if we even get the mildest impression that they are keeping their dogs in the basement and allowing them to poop down there, then we will take some pretty immediate action steps to get that individual out of there before the problem becomes so horrible that it costs several thousands of dollars to fix. And rent check has allowed us to catch a couple of bad actors pretty quickly in the first couple of months. One so much as it's a larger house that we have, and we were able to get them out before they did any permanent damage. So when we got them out, the turn was just a matter of a deep clean, and then it was ready to be rented again. Whereas if that went on for any serious length of time, it would have had to have been like a full gut all over again, which would have been a massive waste of time. I hope that's helpful. Is it okay to own my first 10 properties under my name and just use an umbrella policy? Absolutely. I would say if you got an insurance agent and an attorney into the same room, in order to mitigate your risks, the insurance agent would make sure that you have the appropriate amount of insurance coverage to protect all of your personal assets. And the attorney would separate all of your assets enough to where something had happened to one of them to where you wouldn't lose all of them or any of your personal assets. So it's a mixture of both of those, I would say. Had the tenant want her boyfriend to move in, she asked that he be added to the lease. After a background check, we added him. She reported that he started using drugs, which is not allowed by the lease, and she's kicked him out. I'm trying to figure out how to remove him from the lease. I have no idea. I would check with an attorney on that. It might be, I do plan to have the tenant pay any legal fees. Any thoughts on how to do this? Yes, I'll be contacting a lawyer. No, I won't do this again, at least for free. What would you do if a tenant wanted to add a roommate? So for that particular one, I would see if it's possible to evict just one of the people, and then, which would be the boyfriend, and then modify the lease there. I don't know. I wouldn't know how to navigate that. I would seek out some counsel, and I'm not so sure how we would do that. It's interesting though. It's also one of those things that it's surprising it doesn't happen more often. I mean, they definitely have to have all authorized occupants on the lease, but the actual lease being made out with that person, I'm not so sure. Maybe that's the thing that you could have done differently, is you could have had them as an authorized occupant, not necessarily on the lease where she's still financially responsible, and he's an authorized occupant. Almost, I don't know. That's a tough one. Is prop stream necessary to check a property's ARV any simpler ways? It's not necessary. It just makes it significantly easier. Prop stream is just like a big data aggregator, right? So the prop stream gives you access to more information kind of at the tip of your fingers. Whereas without prop stream, you have to consult like 15, 20 different websites in order to get the same amount of information that prop stream just gives you in a couple clicks. So before PropStream, the way that I determined a property's ARV was by going on Zillow, Redfin, Trulia, Realtor.com, and comparing the different recently sold properties to the property that I'm looking at. So PropStream kind of allows you to just like click the ones that you're interested in, whereas you'd probably just have to like write down, open up a Word doc and type out the address, the number of bedrooms, number of baths, the square footage, and the recently sold price. Maybe even kind of make a note of the condition of the property, because that's one of the things that PropStream makes easy is they link all the photos. So as you're, kind of scrolling through, figuring out the ones that have sold for something comparable, you can see what kind of condition the property is in, whether or not it's even something that you can reasonably compare your property to. So yeah, make some type of note of the condition of the property because that's important. And then square footage is probably most important. And then after that, condition. Now condition over square footage. Condition's most important and then square footage. That was definitely helpful. Thanks. Will this video be saved on your channel? Yes, I will request. You might be the only person that ever watches it because of the laissez-faire nature that I answered that question. But yes, I will request that individual answer be removed and posted as an individual video. I think I think that is a helpful thing. The internet is really tricky, especially YouTube. I get that I'm not the most entertaining of fellas, but you know what? To make myself feel better, though, I've got a couple of billionaires that I really enjoy listening to, and I'll look at their views, and a video will have like 5,000 views, and it'll be like the greatest advice I've ever heard in my life. And then a video of a cat rolling around with a turtle will have like 58 million views. I think that's pretty comical. Another thing that I think is comical, I don't know if you're going to be able to see it. That is my middle daughter, and she is crying because her banana had a bruised spot on it. And I was able to take that picture, and it has quickly turned into one of my favorite pictures ever. She's just 2, and made her sad that her banana was bruised. So it brought up some really big tears. And I made it my background. As cruel as that may seem, makes me smile because I think it's so funny. All right. Well, hey, we've been doing this for an hour and 16 minutes. I think we got some good conversation in here. I will stick around for some more questions. Got 12 people on. Pretty thrilled about that. It's like a whole classroom full of people. That's a good sized class. Yeah, thanks. So funny. We have 5 kids now. I like all of them, but it's really impressive to see like just how different their personalities are and what they take interest to. It's really cool. And I would also encourage anybody that wants to have kids. I would say having kids is a lot like rental properties, right? It kind of gets easier the more of them you have. It's pretty counterintuitive. You would think the difficulty rises in like a very linear fashion, but it doesn't. And one thing that's really cool, because it's just me and my brother, who I talk about a lot on this channel, and we're business partners. And he means the world to me and all. But, it was just him and I growing up. So I didn't necessarily have any experience with like a large family. But what I think is really cool, that was very unexpected, is the relationships that they're able to have and build with each other. I think that's really cool. Obviously, my brother and I are really close, but I never thought about that at any sort of scale. So it's fun. It's a lot of fun. So just like I'm encouraging everybody to get to 10 rental properties as quickly as possible, I also think you should get to 10 kids as quickly as possible. I'm just kidding. That's excessive and unnecessary. Unless you want 10 kids, in which case it's perfectly reasonable. But obviously, I'm not trying to sit here and thwart upon everybody to have 10 children. Thought you were going to rent. Yeah. Oh, thanks, Greg. Well, I'm hoping that everybody else is starting to work on their 2023 goals as well, figuring out what you want your life to look like next year, to the extent you have control of it, of course. We originally, I was planning on attempting to try to buy 400 homes next year, but I have since changed my mind, and I am going to do my very best to do a repeat of 200 properties. So I think that that'll be fun. We utilize a lot of private lender fund where we have short-term debt, maybe 2 to 4 year debt on these properties as we acquire them. That's our purchase price plus the renovation costs. And, at that we generally pay somewhere between 8 and 12%, give or take. So one of the main things that we're going to focus on next year is getting maybe about 70% of our portfolio on long-term debt, and then keeping about 30% on that short term, because we have been riding out maybe 40 to 50% of our portfolio on long-term debt. And, short-term debt is just significantly more expensive. So by minimizing from a global perspective the amount of short-term debt we have based on the amount of long-term debt, then we will just immediately kind of become more profitable by lowering that exposure. So that'll be fun. And then also, that will not require us to raise any additional capital, because if we wanted to buy 400 homes next year, we would essentially need to double the amount of short-term capital that we have at our I don't know the word. I just blanked on it. Just the amount of short-term capital that we have. So doing another 200 next year, assuming the prices don't skyrocket again, it should be pretty much a 1-for-1, and we will already have all of the capital that we need to buy 200 homes next year. It's just a matter of refinancing those out and putting those onto that long-term debt. So that is our plan for 2023. We have a sponsor. Let me talk about that. We have a sponsor of the video series, Color and Style. Man, where did it go? There we go. Here they are. All of a sudden, I can empathize with meteorologists. Color and Style Home Finishes. They are here local to Dayton. They have all the home finishes that you could possibly ask for: cabinets, flooring, tile, carpet, all of the things. In fact, we are going to experiment with one of the properties that we're purchasing, and we're going to put some carpet tile down on. It's a property that's on a slab. I personally have never seen it done before, but some of these carpet tiles are pretty slick. So we're going to see how that holds up, especially on a slab. It seems to make sense. It seems like it's going to be pretty easy install. And then in the event that it needs replaced, it should just be pretty easy to do one tile instead of the entire floor. But not sure how it's going to look, not sure how it's going to be perceived by the market or received by the market. And I'm interested to see how that plays out. So I'll probably do a standalone video on that just because I'm interested. Because if carpet tiles do well, and if it looks as good as I think it will, might be a good solution. Because LVP, as good as it is, I'm just starting to get a little, just a little bit burned out on it. But Carpet's Color and Style does sell great LVP as well. So here's their phone number, and here's who they are. And if you need any cabinets, carpet, flooring, or any other home finishes, check them out. I'm sure they'll treat you very well. All right. Well, hey, I sure do appreciate everybody. Have a Merry Christmas this weekend. I think that's when Christmas is. And then get all your goals in order for next year. And then once the lull of the holiday season wears off, get to work. In fact, if you want to feel at all similar to me, then you could just keep on working. And during this holiday lull, you can get very granular on everything that you want to achieve next year and go ahead and start working towards that. That's what I'm going to do. But I understand that not everybody is like a workaholic and gets as much satisfaction out of working as I do. So my version of a vacation would be, 72 hours of uninterrupted time to just get to work. All right. Hey, I appreciate all of you, and I will talk to you all soon. Next week, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Goodbye.